All right, today we're going to be going over installing a dash cam in the 2020 electric vehicle Kona. This would probably be regular for the standard gas and probably even some of the newer ones. But we're going to start by pulling this apart. We obviously want to figure out which location you want. I'm kind of going back and forth between putting it on the actual window like that and kind of attaching it up here. So I'm going to get in some of this, pull it apart, and see what all I like on the inside. To start to pull this, there's two screws up in here, Phillips head, and I'm going to start with removing those. Alright, so after removing those two screws, there's the left and the right one, you're just going to kind of tug down on the back side, and as it comes down, you've got a clip there, and two clips there, and these larger parts make it so it kind of comes up in first. So we're going to look at some of the wiring on the back side, see if any of these give us power when the vehicle is in the on position only. If not, there should be power coming to the mirror when the vehicle's on only. I've also got power, watch the shadow, up here for the moonroof, sunroof, so that could also be a source for power. So I'm going to look into that and see what we can find. Alright, so I tested out all the wires. They seem to all have constant power and then use a different trigger wire. But what I was able to find is up here in the mirror, this one is going to be positive and negative only when the button is pushed. The black is your negative and your red over here is your positive. And we're able to verify that by turning the key on and off. And we can hook this back up to the positive. As you can tell, we've got no positive volts. And let me see if I can switch it on.
Insert a memory card.
So as you can see, when we turn the ignition on, we're getting the 12.1. And turning it off, it goes back down to just millivolts. So it's still gonna have a little bit of flow, but that's not enough to actually turn the device on. So that's the wire we're gonna use for that, and it's low voltage, so it won't cause an issue. The other option you could do is you could run the wire all the way down the sides, all the way through the bottom, and down to here, which is where the cigarette lighter is. Kind of hard to see. So down there where the cigarette lighter is at, and you can tap into the back side of that. Alright, I went ahead and split that wire for the camera and opened up my two ends to have just a little bare wire. The white is the negative and the yellow is the positive. So what I'm going to do is just using a small razor blade, I'm going to come in here. I know it's going to be hard to see with the lighting and everything in distance, but I'm just going to create a little tiny slit in the wire that we tested for ground. And I'm going to do this because I'm actually going to solder it in. And we're wanting to get just enough exposed where we can get the razor blade in between some of those layers. And what I like to do, once getting them kind of in between the layers, is twist it just a little bit where it comes out. I can now take my wire, and I probably could have a little bit less, but I'm going to leave a little bit extra just to be safe. And we're going to slide that through the wire and crimp it back. Make sure if you get it all the way through, and then we're going to put a little bit of solder on it to hold it in place. Anytime I'm doing any type of soldering inside of a vehicle, I like to try to kind of cover up as much as possible. Got one of the M12s, does a little tiny solder gun. It works really well for stuff like this. I can get it into tight places. Alright, as you see, I've got the black one done, the negative, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit on for positive. Make sure it's got a good layer. And just put some electrical tape on it. Once we wrap this back up, we're just going to plug this back in. It's just a standard little push button right there. We'll plug this back in. put the cover back on this once we figure out where we're going to put the camera. All right, I know I am one step ahead, but to get this off, if you stick your finger up in the corner and pull this way, and then do the same thing here, it will pull off on the back side, or just these little tiny connectors. So once it kind of pulled off, it separated and came right off. What I like to always do is, even though it's being held on by double-sided tape and it would probably hold, I go ahead and drill a small hole and add in a small nut and bolt just in that location, just so that it won't come off for any reason. So one thing I did is I went with the wife, since this is her daily driver to and from work, and we went ahead and held up in a lot of different locations to see where we wanted it to actually be. Tighten these down on it, and we'll put a little drop of Loctite just so it doesn't come undone. Alright, so as you can see, we got those locked down. I know the Loctite normally goes on first, but if you still put a little bit on there, it will settle down into the threads, and it's going to keep it from coming back out anyways. So give that a couple minutes to dry, and we'll get it back up in there. Alright, so to get it back on, we're just going to slide it back up, let the bottom clip in. Just need to push harder. Alright, so to put this back in, we're just going to bring it up into place, the top. The bottom just kind of clips in. Now we got our camera, the mirror. We've stuck our extra wire up in here, which we'll clean up. And pull all our needed wire down. Run it into the camera. Tuck it back in. And we're looking for this little piece here. This just pulled off by hand earlier. So, we're going to pull that down a little bit. And we're just going to clean this up. Like that. Now you've got your mirror. Depending on where you have it set, you can just barely see the dash camera. And we're going to put this back together. Alright, so bringing this back up, we're going to plug the little tiny white wire in. Plug our lights in. As I said earlier, this front part is going to go up, and this just all pushes up until it clips in place. This will probably be the hardest part of the job. These screws are kind of small. We're going to fit on the end of the screwdriver, try to feed them back in, and snug them down. And at that point there, all you got to do is turn the vehicle on and make sure it boots up. This one does take a second, but the light is now on, meaning it's got power, it's booting up, and we got to go program the micro SD card for it, for the settings that we want. And there you go. We'll do a walk around, let you see it from the outside. Alright, so as you can tell, we now have it in place. You can tell it's pretty discreet being there. The memory card's in it. What we're going to do is kind of make sure that our eye is level to where we want it to be. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down. And then what I like to do is take the SD card out, go put it in the computer, and check and make sure that the image is what we want. Alright, so verifying, I've just selected the last image that we have and pull it up on the software just to see the image. As you see, I like to see the hood of the vehicle, not too worried about up here in the sky because that'd be tree line, but it's got a good image of the side, nothing blocking it, so I'm happy with that placement. I'll finish tightening that down before it moves and finish my settings. I know it's probably going to be extremely hard to see because of the glow up top. So just trying to show you kind of where it sits. It's up out of the way from the driver view, depending upon if you're a little taller or a little shorter, how much of the view you actually see of that in there.